Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to the High Vibration Living podcast.
Thank you. Happy to
This
be
is
here.
this is such a treat for me. There's so much that I want to learn from you today, and I think the audience does as well. But can you tell the audience just a little bit more about your culinary background and how you ended up in the position that you're with the Alice Waters Institute?
Sure. I had a pretty unconventional route in the culinary world. I grew up in Berkeley and I went to UC Berkeley and then graduated with a degree in art history, a very useful degree in art history. And just had always been very interested in food. I had a job at a really wonderful food shop during college where they made everything from scratch, and I was just fascinated. I was hired, to slice prosciutto out in the front, and I kept looking back in the kitchen and seeing what they were making, and I kind of kept drifting back there and realized that it was really a passion. And so I decided to go to culinary school, and I did two different programs. I went to the Culinary Academy in San Francisco, which is now run by the Cordon Bleu, I believe. And I also went to the Cordon Bleu in Paris. So I did kind of a double. I wanted to cook abroad, and that seemed like a good way to do it. And then I did an internship at Chez Panisse and kind of never looked back. Stayed there. Had a couple of other jobs out there in the world, but I was there, on and off for about 35 years, or have been.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, when did you start to move out of the kitchen and more into a position of nonprofit work, Alice Waters Institute, education?
Well, interestingly, so served as the chef and GM of Chez Panisse for a few years towards the end of my tenure there, and I was getting pretty, restaurant life is pretty 24/7, and I was the one getting the phone call, when things happened, and so was absolutely the most amazing experience of my life, but also quite a lot. And was serving on the board of the Ecology Center in San Juan Capistrano, and I had become just enamored with that place, with what Evan was doing, with just the whole idea. They were really eager to grow a culinary program there. And so Evan talked me into coming down, moving to Orange County and running their culinary program. And so and that was more about developing some retail things, but also educational, programming, and really thinking about how do we take these ideas of farm to table and supporting the right kind of agriculture, and how do we teach people about it and teach them how to live that life. So I would say that's kind of how I transitioned into it. And then after a bit of time, I decided to move back up to the Bay Area, and Alice was looking for help at the Edible Schoolyard project. And so I came back and have been working for the last 5 years with the Edible Schoolyard project. And then we started this initiative, the Alice Waters Institute.
So, what's the difference for people that are hearing both and are just getting familiar with Alice Waters? What's the Alice Waters Institute? What's Edible Schoolyard Project?
Okay, good questions. So I think many people know who Alice Waters is. She's the godmother of farm to table restaurants. She opened Chez Panisse Restaurant in Berkeley in 1971 with some friends. And she just wanted to have a place where people could gather and eat and talk about politics and film. And, this was really the heyday of the hippies in Berkeley and alternative lifestyles and protests. And she really loved and loves all of that. And she had lived in France also and was just moved by how people ate there, how they shopped every day, how they made very simple food, but it was so fresh and in season that it was just an epiphany, every single meal. And she really wanted to try to do that back here in the United States, in California. And this was at a time when, a fancy restaurant was, the big French restaurant, and you would go and you had escargot and you'd have entrecôte de boeuf and you would have, a big red wine. And She wasn't interested in that. And so she decided to open a restaurant with a fixed menu. So there's no choice. You come in, and I think it was 4.99 or 5.99, something like that. And it was a three-course menu, and you could get it with wine or without wine. And I think there was coffee and tea, and that was it. And it was just a runaway success from the moment she opened it. And it was in an old house. And she really tapped into something that people were craving, which is that feeling of a connection to nature because you're eating something that is happening outside your door. You know, you're eating plums and they're growing all over town on the trees. Um, and it also tapped into the idea of a it's almost like going to someone's home for dinner. Someone with really good taste who can really cook. So that was what she wanted to do. And so that restaurant's been open for 50, going on 54 years this year. And she also became very interested, and when she had her daughter, she became very interested in what her daughter was eating and what kids at school were eating. And there's a school that's in her neighborhood, Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School, and she used to walk through there every day between her house and the restaurant, and it was kind of a little dilapidated, and there was a huge 1 acre former parking lot that just had weeds growing out of the cracks and of the pavement. And she decided that it was an eyesore and it was ridiculous that the kids didn't have a green space on their campus. And so she called the principal and she said, "I think this is terrible." And he said, "I agree. And if you want to do something about it, go right ahead, lady." And so she got a group of people together and they raised money and they jackhammered up the concrete and they planted fava beans, and then there was a temporary building and they turned that into a kitchen. And she really, with the original teachers, developed this program, which is taking the curriculum from the schools. It's a middle school, so it's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and teaching it in the kitchen classroom and the garden classroom. So this is not, this is a little bit that people sometimes misunderstand about the program, and understandably, because it's like, oh, it's cooking and gardening. And actually what it is it's really social studies and math in the kitchen. And it's biology and chemistry in the garden. And the teachers work really closely with the faculty at the school. They understand the curriculum that's going to be happening for each grade, and they integrate the curriculum. So it's really like a reinforcement of what the kids are learning in their curriculum. So humanities, social studies, science, and math all come to the garden. And also music comes to the garden sometimes. And, you know, it's a space that is made available to teachers who also just want to bring their classes in for a one-off. And then, so that just had its 30th anniversary. So it's been around for 30 years. So we run this program for the 1,000 kids that go to that school. We also run trainings. So people who want to learn how to put an edible schoolyard in their school. We have on our website, we have tons of resources, everything from lesson plans to how to make a container garden to ADA accessible, beds to everything you can imagine, fundraising, everything. Legal advice about setting up a nonprofit. And then we also host trainings. So we bring educators to the site for multi-day trainings a few times a year, and we do virtual training. So it's a real, it's a place that seeds other programs where people can come, educators can come and learn. There are now almost 7,000 edible schoolyards around the world. So we don't manage them, we just manage the one. And it's been just wildly successful, and obviously adopted lots of places. And so the final connector and the final full circle idea is something that Alice calls school-supported agriculture. So, and that is, how do we connect with kids kind of in the way we connect with customers at Chez Panisse through food? And how do we have the purchasing of the schools support local organic regenerative farmers? which does several things. If you're purchasing locally from people who are taking care of the land, you are supporting your local economy and your local communities. You are feeding kids the best, freshest, most delicious food possible, and you are helping to mitigate climate change. So through, stewardship of the land. So, we work with school districts all around the state, helping them understand their regional food shed, who's growing food in their area, what dairies are in their area, what dairies are maybe up north in Humboldt County when you're, down in Orange County, and there isn't dairy in Orange County, or at least not sustainable dairy. It's about bringing together producers and food service directors from districts and getting them to work together and be interested. And it's really an amazing thing to see when they all come together. The food service directors just they hear a story about a farmer and they just are so excited, and they just say, I have to buy my watermelons from that person. I just have to. And for a small farmer, a purchase from a school district with 30,000 kids, that could be their entire crop. And it is a lifesaver, and it is really helping to preserve our agrarian, culture and our agrarian communities. So, yes, that's what the Alice Waters Institute is. We also, under that umbrella, there's a lot of sort of thought leadership that Alice does really around the world. So we do events, she speaks, and she also has a book coming out. It is a book, really a manifesto about school food, and it's called School Food Revolution. And it's a kind of an interesting story because she started writing it before COVID. And it was meant to be, she thought, I'm going to write a manual for schools about food, and it's going to have a picture and a recipe, and a picture and a recipe. And so you could go through, and there'd be a section on soups, and there'd be a section on salads. And with COVID and everything, the book project kind of got paused, and then we took it back up about 3 years ago. And I had started to get into school food and really working with school districts and working with farmers. And I said, Alice, I think this manual is not really going to land well because, her idea of school food, which, the values are the same. Everybody's got, everybody who wants to serve good food has the same good values. But, she was doing recipes for 20. And these people are cooking for thousands. And so we thought about it for a long time. And I said, Alice, what people really need is they need inspiration, and they need, kind of the values spelled out. And then everybody can adopt the values and adapt the values to their particular situation. And the book just came out beautifully. It's really got a really gorgeous section at the beginning that talks about, beauty and nourishment and community and kind of right living for what, for lack of a better way to put it. So yeah, she's really excited, and it's coming out October 14th, and you can pre-order it on our website. So yeah,
What are
that's
some
going to
of
be really.
I'd love to know what are some of maybe the recipes or meals that are in the book to inspire school districts? What are some of the things in there that you saw and you thought, wow, wish I had that opportunity to eat that for lunch as a kid?
Pretty much the whole book. I mean, it's everything you want to eat. It is, the recipes are very simple. They are because it's hard to do anything elaborate, when you're cooking for that many. They are also very budget conscious because schools have, $2.85 or something to spend on a serving of school lunch. So, which can be done. If your recipe is simple enough and if you're purchasing in season, because that's when things are least expensive, and you aren't doing too much to the food. So there are things like there's a wonderful pozole recipe, which is kids love pozole. There's a pizza recipe, but it's it's make your own pizza, your own sauce and how to make a focaccia base, so that it's a homemade item. What else is in there? Oh, there's a great noodle, like noodle salad, rice noodle salad that's really delicious that has carrots and cucumbers in it and it's real crunchy and serve it with lettuce leaves and kids can make wraps and so there's a lot of dipping and wrapping and kids like to eat with their hands and they like to also have a little bit of agency. So the food is a little bit deconstructed because so kids can combine it and put the spicy chilies on their pozole if they want, or put the tortilla chips on their pozole if they want. So, lots of great. I mean, it's a wonderful book, whether you're cooking at home for your kids, or whether you're running a huge food service program, or whether I think it's a great book, honestly, for like a young person who's just leaving home for the first time and needs a book to really have some basic, delicious, easy, inexpensive recipe. It's like the best college kid book ever.
Yeah.
So
And it's
I
really interesting. College cafeterias need a revolution as well. It's really
yes,
interesting. It's almost like, even though with all the work that the Weston A. Price Foundation does, people still aren't connecting the dots that the food we eat affects our ability um, to retain what we're learning in the classroom and how we're showing up in the classroom and our attention and our ability to communicate and connect with our teachers and other classmates. That this is not just about food and having a delicious meal. It plays how we show up in every space in our life. And so if these kids can get more nutritionally dense meals with local ingredients, how they behave in the classroom, how they score on tests change and improves, and everybody gets the outcome that they want.
absolutely. I have a good example of that. We worked with a small district in West Marin, very small. It's only 250 kids and it's basically just two little schools and it's kind of out in the country. Their participation rate was about 9%, which means 9% of the kids were eating at school. And so we came in and we helped hire a new chef. We helped them with their procurement. We helped them write their new menus. We helped the PTA paint the cafeteria and, put up a mural, just little things like that. And we completely revamped the food program and now they're running at about 88% participation. And the kids, and we beta tested all the recipes with the kids. We, made sure that it was going to be successful because that's another thing is there's a lot of anxiety about upending your food program at a school, but we try to really go through the steps and do it thoughtfully and get buy-in and understand who the people who can help shepherd this through with the community are. And so there's a lot of pre-work and work that goes into something like that. But we were doing a beta testing with kids for a spring menus. And so the program had been going on for 2 or 3 months, and the principal stopped by and she said, the thing I noticed, because the principal's always there early, right? The principal's always there to unlock the doors. And she said, there are so many more kids here on time in the morning because they want to come for breakfast. Like they
Really?
talk their parents and you got to drive me. I got to be at school by 8 because I want to have the French toast casserole that they're doing today, or I want to have the blackberry parfait that they're doing today. And she said it has just made an enormous difference in the engagement with the kids, in terms of them paying attention in class and showing up and wanting to be there. And the cafeteria now is like their little community center. The kids hang out in there and they talk to the chef and So it's like you said, it's not just nutritious food, which is incredibly important, but it is, kids feel a sense of care when care is being given. And yeah,
Yeah, when they can connect more with the whole school experience, they will show up different, and it will show not just in their attitude, but in their scores on tests and in all areas of their life. Um,
absolutely.
and we can all apply this as adults too, right? We've all worked in an office space at one point, where you either like the vibe or you don't. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that. So
Right.
if we can make spaces more inviting for the kids, for the parents, for the teachers, and to do that through food, I mean, what a more joyful experience all around.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's a great pleasure to be involved in this work because it's hard, change is hard, and there's so many hurdles, between budgets and lack of training and lack of skills and lack of infrastructure. Um, yeah, but when you can make some little changes, even small changes, it's really noticeable, and the kids see it right away.
So, for anyone that's listening that is a school teacher or has a position within a school that controls ordering and spending for food procurement, how can they get involved where they can learn from the Edible Schoolyard Project and Alice Waters Institute on how to make these changes on where they're purchasing their ingredients with their budget?
Excellent question, and it's kind of a multi-pronged answer. Um, so if you're within the state of California, there are, and in some other states, there are a lot of resources for people who want to, or food service directors, or um, county office of education, if they want to, decide to commit to making a change at their school. There are Depending on what your hurdles are and where you are on the journey of changing your school food, there's lots of different resources. One is the Chef Ann Foundation, which was started by a woman named Ann Cooper, and it's a national organization now. But I think they started in Colorado, but they have a big presence in California, and they have a program. They do a lot of skills training, so they really get in with school districts, and the ideal is that you're cooking everything in the schools. But what happened is in the 70s and 80s, we pulled all of the kitchens out of the schools. That somebody had the bright idea that, oh, the big chicken company in Arkansas is going to make all of the chicken fingers for all the schools in the United States and put them in a little box and ship them around frozen. And so they just basically everybody adopted that mindset, and they just got rid of all the school kitchens. And um, so and that was when the nutrition standards got gutted, and ketchup was a vegetable, and all the terrible mythology and real stuff that you hear from that time. So it's been a long slog, kind of getting infrastructure, like even stoves or ovens, or even what a lot of schools are really focusing on now is having even just the warming service lines, so they can actually serve a hot, like a lasagna, if they have a lasagna or a tamale pie, that they could actually, serve that up to the kids. Right now, in a lot of places, everything's in a little box with I'm sad to say, a piece of plastic over it, and it gets heated in the oven, which I think we're all quite aware is really probably not a good thing. And we're really kind of poisoning our brains all the time, our bodies and our brains. And so that's a big, so having training so that you can have staff that actually understands how to slice and dice and saute and roast and actually cook things. It's kind of a big deal. So Chef Ann Foundation does a lot of that. The CDFA, California Department of Food and Agriculture in California, is an enormous resource. They have a whole division called the Office of Farm to Fork, and they work a lot with school districts and farmers. That's the state of California is divided into 8 regions. I think it's 8. And there are 2 representatives from the CDFA from each region. And we work really closely with them. They have a lot of grants that go out to schools for different things. Sometimes might be for a garden in a school. It might be for purchasing. It might be for infrastructure, like to put in ovens, to pay for ovens. It might be for trainings. So there's a lot of, historically, there's been a lot of
Yeah.
money put towards that. And that's thanks to the governor and first partner who have been very committed to that. And they also, the California government established universal school lunch. So everybody can eat. There's no more signing up and qualifying or not qualifying or qualifying for 50% or, it was I think they figured out that they were losing money just on the bureaucracy of managing all of that. And with universal lunch, participation just goes up because the stigma is gone. There's just no more hurdles. And really importantly, when participation goes up, that is when school districts their budgets start to they go in the black, because the more you get paid for every student that eats, you get reimbursed from the government, the federal government. So the more you can raise participation, the more funds you will have coming in from the federal government, and then the more money you'll have to buy better food, to get more kids so it's like
Yeah.
it's a really good climb if you can get participation up. And that's where really good food comes into play, right? Like we worked with a district down in the South Bay, huge district, 27,000 kids. And this was the watermelon story. So she met a watermelon grower at one of our workshops that we did down in the region. And she said, okay, I'm going to buy all your watermelons. So she bought all the watermelons, and that's a lot of watermelon to feed 27,000 kids. So it was like, 4 weeks of shipments, of 7 or 8 pallets a week or something like that. And they went out to the schools, and the food service cut them up and put them out. And so the kids, the first week came and they're like, oh, watermelon. And they tried it and they're like, watermelon. And then the next week, the kids saw the watermelon. They were literally jumping up and down. They were just so happy to have something so fresh and delicious and fun and special and
Local. And
local.
and they understand that. And
Yes.
like, you teach them that it's available for a short period of time. You only get it in the summer. Enjoy it
Yep.
while you can.
Exactly.
It's such a great life education to understand that certain things are only available at a certain time of year. And that's when you dive in and you take advantage and you
Yeah.
enjoy. And then you
Yep.
surrender to, not having it again until a later date. And you understand that
And
life
then plums
cycle.
are next. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just hit on a really important principle of both the Edible Schoolyard Project and the Alice Waters Institute, and that is that food is really like lunch should be an academic subject. Like lunch should be a learning experience, and that is exactly the kind of learning that you can do at lunch. And when the watermelon grower, we made big posters of the farmer and we put them up, and there's some districts have farmer trading cards, that like the kids get obsessed with the different farmers. And so it is a very much part of an important part of education and an important part of just sort of being a person on the planet, right? And understanding that things are not, first of all, we're not going to apple, banana, and orange you to death anymore. Are there things? And sure, for 4 months of the year, there's not a lot besides apples in a lot of places, but there's like 8 different kinds of apples. So you might get so they get to learn about biodiversity. They get to learn about like it's with their senses, the different kinds of tastes and experiences. And so yes, that's thank you for bringing that up because it's a really important piece of it too.
Well, I'm not a parent, but all I can think of if I was in that space and my kids are going to school and they're enjoying the lunch on campus and I overhear that they're having watermelon and it's from a local farm, like what a great opportunity. Instead of spending all this money trying to figure out activities to entertain your kids on the weekend, you can look up the farm and drive by it and see if you can arrange, a walkthrough with your kids and like
Yeah.
help them see where their food's coming from. And that's for me, that's fun, and that's play,
Yeah.
and that's understanding your community, and, these it's free, and I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of parents are racking their brains, spending all this money to trying to entertain their kids on the weekends, and it can be as simple as, like, tying the things in that they're learning at school out in their community.
Yes. And there is nothing happier than a kid on a farm, I can tell you.
Totally.
And they're just, many of them are just blown away by the idea that you can eat, like just eat these things, and so many of us are disconnected from where food comes from and how it's grown and the effort it takes to grow something. That's the other thing too. Sometimes I'm out on a farm and if it's really hot and I'm thinking, wow, boy, it would be hard to pick peaches all day out here. And and then somewhere deep in my brain, there's that feeling. And then when I see a peach, at the store, I'm going to take some extra care with it. And I'm going to be sure I eat it when it's exactly ripe. And, I'm not going to, anyway, it just sort of makes you appreciate also the effort and the people behind your food.
Absolutely. For those listening, they're hearing about your workshops. Who qualifies for your workshops and how did they find out how to get to sign up and be a part of them?
So they're by invitation, only because we're a very small team and we can only accommodate a number of people at a time. But we kind of go by CDFA region. So we might be in Humboldt, or we might be in Orange County or Imperial. We invite almost all the districts in a region. And then we just do our best to accommodate everybody. We typically start with larger districts because the kind of the quantifiable success of our program is the amount of local organic regenerative food that is purchased. So we do pilot programs with small districts, but in general, we like to work with bigger districts because it moves the needle for the farms so much in such a bigger way, and the impact is just bigger. It's more kids, it's more produce off the farms, it's more product, it's more. So we focus on districts that are 3,000 and larger right now, and we have these workshops are funded by the CDFA. And we're working on getting more funding so that we can expand this program because, of course, we would like to offer this to everybody, and not only offer to everybody, but offer to districts multiple times.
Yeah.
Because it's just a 1 or 2 day thing, and it's really nice to come back to a school district and see what they've done, and then maybe reinforce that. And maybe there's some other farmers that have gotten involved in selling to schools, and it just kind of grows and grows and grows. So we are working on getting funding to increase the frequency and also just, the number of places we're going.
Are you finding that parents are wanting to volunteers in the cafeterias on campus now, or is that still staying separate?
They typically parents volunteer for things like if you're going to do a tasting, like a promo tasting in the cafeteria of a new, like say you're working with a new farmer and it's going to be cherry tomatoes. One of the things they found is that if you debut the item with the kids in a small way first, like you have them try it and you make a fun game, like they put a sticker, like loved it, not sure, heck no, and they love putting the sticker up and saying what they think. And then you might introduce the tomatoes on the salad bar, and maybe they're yellow and they're not used to seeing yellow cherry tomatoes, or, whatever the thing is. And a lot of times parents can be involved there. With school food, there's a lot of in the kitchens, there's a lot of regulations. There are unions that provide the labor, so there's a lot of rules around who can and can't do what. And we believe in the unions and we try to work really closely with them, and because they are the backbone of all the work that gets done in the schools. Um, there are, PTAs can really get involved with asking, saying, hey, can I reach out to the Chef Ann Foundation on behalf of the school or on behalf of the county to see if they would come and put an intern in our school or within our district. There are, so kind of like advocacy, and then volunteering in the cafeteria. Um, Showing up for meetings when the wellness policy is being written. It's a thing that a lot of people don't know about, but every district in the country is required to have a wellness policy. And that is where things like the amount of time that kids have to eat lunch, the way a requirement, not nutritional requirements, because those are decided by the federal government, but it might be like, we're going to do 25% local produce purchasing. It could be, there's all kinds of little things that impact the food program at a school, and that's a place where a lot of that is parked.
Got it. This is so interesting. I mean, it makes me want to like, I live in Laguna Beach, and that's where I grew up and went to school, and it's where my mom grew
Yeah.
up, and my aunts and uncles, and my family's been here for multiple generations. And so it makes
Oh,
me want to reach out to certain people so I can at least, volunteer or support my community and what my friends' kids are eating in school.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it takes a village, and and there's all kinds of, if people are really interested in policy and advocacy, there's a bill that's going to be signed into law, AB 268, I think. I can look it up, but it legislates, and this is a state law, that a certain amount, it increases funding for local organic regenerative purchasing. So there are lots of, you know, uh, little legislative things that come along that really impact school food dramatically. And universal school lunch was the biggie. That was huge. Um, but yeah, write to your representative. Put your name on petitions for things you believe in, and yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
And
And I just
encourage
want,
your kids to eat.
yeah,
Encourage your kids to eat lunch at school, even on the days when they're not totally psyched about it, because the more everyone commits to their kids eating at school, the more funding the school gets from the federal government, and then so therefore the more, you know,
the better quality ingredients that they can get and the more local ingredients that they get, and it's a whole system that's like almost like we have to get everyone on board to trans to
yes,
move this movement, which is ultimately going to make everyone's lives a little easier because the parents don't have to spend so much time, you know, foraging and putting together meals every day for them. And then if we can get better quality ingredients for the kids, then they're going to participate in class better, they're going to behave better, they're going to be able to retain more information, their scores are going to go up in school, they're going to be physically healthier, like everything falls in line, and we create the system the way the system used to be run, essentially, like just a healthy, supportive community.
yep.
It's
And for a lot of kids, these are the only meals they eat. LA Unified School District, I think, is low 90s, at or below poverty, and that's a 500,000 kids. So this this is the this is the nutrition that they get in a day, is the breakfast and the lunch, and they do a little light, they call it supper, a little light end of day meal. And a lot of families depend on that, and it's a great thing, because we know it's nutritious because it's following guidelines, very pretty strict nutrition guidelines. We know it's fresh, because they're, making it every day. And And then that means that the parents, don't have to use, their food stamps and their, so that they have more that they can use, for feeding, the family on the weekends and so forth. So it's like it's a great thing to have good food in our public schools. Really, because when we all do better, we all do better. If we're all doing better, we're all doing better.
I
So,
completely agree.
yeah,
Yeah, and every child is a future of a community. So it's the quality of food that everyone gets to intake improves everything. So this is amazing work
absolutely.
that you guys are doing. So how can just the average person that's listening get involved? So someone like me who doesn't have kids but's listening to this and they're like, I want to support my community and my
Hmm.
schools and my community to be getting more fresh seasonal ingredients on the table. How can I help out and volunteer for these farms or for the Alice
Hmm.
Waters Institute or the Edible Schoolyard Project?
Well, we love donations. All the people that are doing this work, all the Chef Ann, and we are a nonprofit, the Center for Eco Literacy, the National Farm to School Network, CDFA is a nonprofit, but it's funded by the state. There are just so many, if you just Google farm to school nonprofits, you'll get a whole bevy. Um, and you can find one that really, maybe it's in your community, maybe it's something, a program that you think is really impactful, and on a bigger scale, and that's something that interests you. But donating to nonprofits is a wonderful way to go. That's, how we keep our wheels rolling. Um, and then, like I said, if you do have kids, just get involved in your school community. And if you don't have kids, get involved in your community school. Volunteer for a farmers market pop up at a back to school night, or a lot of communities are doing fun stuff. Volunteer at an educational, like a local educational farm education entity like the Ecology Center in San Juan Capistrano, or um, we have a farm in Stockton, Edible Square Project Farm, and we love our volunteers there. We have a big CSA program, and schools come out. It's more like a destination edible schoolyard. It's 6 acres, and it's kind of in the middle of this really wild industrial area in Stockton. And then there's just this oasis with chickens and trees and plums and peaches and rows of corn. And so lots of schools come out for field trips, and they do a little bit of gardening, and then they have a little cooking class, and they get to eat something and learn about where their food comes from a little bit.
Do you guys have any upcoming fundraisers that people can look out for to sign up for or buy a ticket?
I would say, yes, we will in the spring. We'll have kind of a big fundraiser. We don't have a date set yet. I would suggest looking at our website, which is the Edible Schoolyard Project. If you just Google that, you'll find our website. And the Alice Waters Institute is an initiative within the Edible Schoolyard Project. So you'll see, if you look at our work, we're a section of that, and you can get news and information there. We have a big Instagram presence, so you can always kind of keep up with what's going on there. Yes.
And I'll have
And
those
we have
links
a
for
big
everybody in the show
giant,
notes.
yeah, great. I was just going to say we have a big giant donate button, which is the first thing that pops up.
Oh,
As
perfect.
most nonprofits do. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's the number one thing you need help with funding. And
Yes.
then, volunteers after that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, volunteers equal to funding. They're both incredibly important. But I know, probably a lot of people listening are not in Berkeley, Berkeley, California. So we encourage people to, just look around in their community and find a school or a, a farm or an education site that needs help.
You've been doing like a lot of education this summer. You've been going around to so many different school districts and farms. Has there been one consistent big takeaway that you've seen from these educators and from people that are taking your courses and classes, is there one big takeaway that you see kind of go off every time at the end of one of your programs?
I would say that after, so the format of the day is that we cook and school food, then we sit down for lunch, and then we have discussion in the afternoon, and that's where the producers sort of talk and tell their story. And then we have a producers marketplace at the end where the food service directors can try all of the produce and things that the farmers have and get to talk to them. What happens is that people, they just make a really deep commitment. They're just say, I'm going to do this, and we worked. There's one district that's here nearby, down the street from us here in Berkeley, and it is kind of a medium-sized district. And this year, the food service director and basically the person who does all the procurement or the purchasing, they're brothers, and they just started at the end of last year, and they're young. They're like 28, and they came to our workshop that we did at the Culinary Institute of America up in Napa. They they heard the farmers' stories, they tried the food, and they called us up the next day and they said, "We are going to go 100% local, organic, regenerative by September 1st of this fall." And they're doing it. They just decided to do it, and they're like, "We're just going to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're going to write the menu so that we can afford, the interestingly, the food is not a lot more expensive. It's a little more, but if you're creative and you buy at the right time and you do pre-planning with a farm and you say, I'll buy it, can you guarantee me a price?" So there's a lot of bidding and pre-purchasing and crop planning and things that happen, especially with bigger districts. But they just decided to do it. And so there's that. Yeah. Which is really, I mean, they're like the best case scenario. Sometimes it's just like with LA Unified School District, for instance, we worked with them for 2 years, and we were able to facilitate like 8 different enormous purchases of sweet potatoes, apples, kiwis. I can't remember what the other things were.
Mhm.
Um, and and so in a certain sense, it's like, oh, you 6 times over 2 years, you change the food a little bit, but it's so much food
Yeah.
that really, 2 of those purchases equal the whole year's worth of purchasing for the small district that's going all the way. So it's kind of all over the map. And that's kind of the beautiful thing, is that every community is different. Every district is different. Every, cohort is different of students and families. And geographically, they're all incredibly different. Some are really remote. Some are in the middle of an urban, gritty urban area. So it's really wonderful to see how each food service director and their producers find where the common ground is and where the progress can happen.
Yeah. Well, this is just exciting that these changes are being made. And hopefully, anyone that's listening to this episode will kind of get more excited for their kids' school year and choose to
Yes.
kind of pay a little more attention to the cafeteria, make sure that their kid tries the food there. They can see what's going on and what's being served, and, um, you know, get involved.
Yes, that would be great. That's what we hope. We hope everybody is thinking about school food, um, and it takes everybody really wanting and caring, wanting this to happen for it to really happen. So,
Can you leave the listener with maybe one health tip that they can consider adding into their life? Whether it's a food that they should choose to look for this fall or something that they can do to improve
mm,
their lunch at home or at work every week?
hmm well, I always recommend, no matter what else you're eating, either cut up a whole bunch of fruit or some really nice crunchy vegetables and put them in a little container and take them with you to work. Or school or wherever you're going. I used to, with my daughter, I used to make her either a vegetable box or a fruit box, every day. And I always knew, and put a dip with it, not the fruits, but the vegetables, make a little homemade ranch dip or something and that they can dip into. But cut up vegetables, like just hand them that instead of, or hand yourself that instead of getting a bag of popcorn or, what are all the things, which I do from time to time, of course, but I do try to head myself off by just cutting up some good fruit or vegetables and taking them with me. And then inevitably, you kind of unconsciously snack on them, but at least you're snacking on something healthy and satisfying too.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's usually carrots, jicama, celery,
Oh yeah.
or it's grabbing some fruit. And that's
Yeah.
that's how I was trained since I was a kid. So that's the direction I
Yep.
go. Um, and it works and it's easy.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like a treat. Like when you open the little box and you have strawberries and a cut up plum and a cut up peach and they're all cut up and washed and it just feels like a little miracle.
That actually sounds like really lovely and nice. Like this is the best time of year for peaches, and they're such a treat when you get a really good, flavorful stone fruit. So, um, if anyone's listening as well, be sure to stop by your farmer's market. This is a good time of year.
Oh, it's the best. It's the kind of the peak of summer, but the fall stuff is coming on, so there's this wonderful overlap. Yeah, it's a really fun time of year to cook from the farmer's market because there's so many things that go together and yeah, remind you of summer, but get you thinking about fall and yeah.
Yes, all the good things, and it's amazing how so much of life is always connected back to food and the meals that we eat with each other. So, thank you for all the work that you are doing, and for your lifelong career and mission of supporting just healthy meals and delicious food and connection over food.
Thank you, Whitney. It was a real pleasure to be here.
And is there any particular place that you would like people to go to continue to connect and learn from you?
I think my contact information is on our website, so certainly, find me there and reach out. I always try to respond to everybody, and the more people that we can have interested in this movement and joining on from their own communities, the better.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thanks, Whitney.